Elasticity of demand, Part 3. In case C, original price is rupees 2 per unit and quantity demanded is 50 units. Therefore, total expenditure is rupees 100. When price falls to rupees 1 per unit, quantity demanded rises to 60 unit and total expenditure incurred is rupees 60. In this case, total outlay is less than original expenditure. Hence, elasticity of demand is less than 1. That is relatively inelastic demand. Third, point method or geometric method. Professor Marshall has developed another method to measure elasticity of demand, which is known as point method or geometric method. The ratio method and total outlay methods are unable to measure elasticity of demand at a given point on the demand curve. At any point on the demand curve, elasticity of demand is measured with the help of the following formula. Point elasticity of demand, ED, is equal to lower segment of demand curve below a given point L by upper segment of demand curve above a given point U. Demand curve may be either linear or non-linear as shown below. A. Linear demand curve. When the demand curve is linear, which is a straight line, we extend the demand curve to meet the y-axis at A and x-axis at B. Price elasticity of demand at x-axis is 0 and y-axis is infinite. Elasticity of demand will be different at each point. Figure 3.16. Let us assume that AB is a demand curve and its length is 8 cm. Point elasticity at various points on a linear demand curve can be measured as follows. B. Non-linear demand curve. When the demand curve is non-linear, which is a convex to origin, to measure price elasticity of demand, we have to draw a tangent AB touching the given point on the demand curve and extending it to meet y-axis at point A and x-axis at point B. ED is equal to lower segment of the tangent below a given point by upper segment of the tangent above a given point is equal to L by U. Figure 3.17. Factors influencing the elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand depends upon several factors which are discussed below. First, nature of commodity. By nature, we can classify commodities as necessaries, comforts, and luxury goods. Demand for necessaries like food grains, medicines, textbooks, etc. is relatively inelastic, and for comforts and luxury goods like cars, perfumes, furniture, etc., demand is relatively elastic. Second, availability of substitutes. Demand for a commodity will be more elastic if its close substitutes are available in the market. For example, lemon juice, sugarcane juice, etc. But commodities having no close substitutes like salt, the demand will be inelastic. Third, number of uses. Single-use goods have a less elastic demand. Multi-use goods have more elastic demand. For example, coal, electricity, etc. Fourth, habits. Habits make demand for certain goods relatively inelastic. For example, addicted goods, drugs, etc. Fifth, durability. The demand for durable goods is relatively elastic. For example, furniture, washing machine, etc. Demand for perishable goods is inelastic. For example, milk, vegetables, etc. Sixth, complementary goods. The demand for a commodity which is used in conjunction with other commodities to satisfy a single want is relatively inelastic. For example, a fall in the price of mobile handsets may lead to rise in the demand for SIM cards. Seventh, income of the consumer. Demand for goods is usually inelastic. If the consumer has high income, the demand pattern of a very rich and an extremely poor person is rarely affected by significant changes in the price. 8. Urgency of needs. Goods which are urgently needed will have relatively inelastic demand. For example, medicines. Luxury goods which are less urgent have relatively elastic demand. 9th. Time period. Elasticity of demand is always related to period of time. It varies with the length of time period. Generally speaking, longer the duration of period, greater will be the elasticity of demand and vice versa. This is because a consumer can change the consumption habits in the long run in favor of cheaper substitutes of the commodities. 10th. Proportion of expenditure. If the proportion of expenditure is a person's income is small, then demand for the product is relatively inelastic. For example, newspapers, if the proportion of expenditure is large, then demand for the product is relatively elastic. You should know determinants, nature, price, elasticity of demand. First, availability of factors. Abundant, few. Abundant, relatively elastic, few, relatively inelastic. Second, nature of commodity. A. Necessary goods. B. Luxury goods. A. Relatively inelastic. B. Relatively elastic. Third, habits. Habituated is relatively inelastic, not habituated is relatively elastic. Time period. Short run, relatively inelastic. Long run, relatively elastic. Fifth, postponement of consumption. Possibility of postponement, relatively elastic. Impossible to postpone, relatively inelastic. Sixth, number of uses of a commodity. Several is